The Treasury Secretary in the US is now saying something about Bitcoin that is currently shaking the whole community. There's also a new Bitcoin price prediction that's going viral right now. Bitcoin is expected to rise to at least $270,000 by 2025. It's all super bullish and has those Valhalla vibes. But we also need to look at it critically, because there are definitely some negative voices that are definitely criticizing it. There's also Bitcoin Senator Cynthia Lummis here in the US now in a new interview. Backgrounds on why we might even be in this 6-month period where things are being evaluated. Whether we might see a strategic Bitcoin crypto reserve in the U.S. because it could build a much bigger foundation here. Where there is more Bitcoin, more crypto, accumulation could happen on a much firmer basis here. But first, we need to take a look here. Now let's get right into it. First, we need to take a look at the U.S. Here's to the Treasury Secretary. And the most shocking thing about this statement is the person who made it. That means that if I make a statement like that, then of course it doesn't shock anyone. But when a statement like that comes from the Treasury Secretary, you really gotta take that in. So just always imagine the German finance minister saying something like that. Or imagine a big political figure, something like that. Just make the comparison and imagine whether this is realistic or in Germany. We're now seeing such massive statements here in the U.S. Take a look at what Scott, the Treasury Secretary, has to say. And then we'll evaluate the whole thing and see what this means for Bitcoin.
I've been excited about the president's embrace of crypto, and I think it fits very well with the Republican Party, the ethos of crypto's about freedom, and the crypto economy is here to stay. The Democrats are running from it because they're trying to wash off the stench of Sam Bankman-Fried and his family's donations to the Democratic Party. So they're willing to take down a whole industry because of bad behavior on their part, bad behavior one actor. And I think that everything's on the table with Bitcoin. And to me, one of the most exciting things about Bitcoin is for a generation of investors who maybe post the great financial crisis have been looking for investment opportunities, or maybe they'd soured on markets. Crypto is bringing in young people. It's bringing in the people who haven't participated in markets, and having a market culture in the U.S. and people believing that markets work for them is a centerpiece of capitalism.
Years, having a strong and enduring market culture in the U.S. and making people believe among the public that the markets work for them. It's a center for capitalism. But most key thing he's saying here, and here we need to pay attention, because he mixed up crypto and Bitcoin. He said crypto or Bitcoin. It seems like he's not making a clear distinction here, but that's irrelevant for now. The most important thing, that crypto, or rather, Bitcoin here represents freedom. And for example, I've never seen a finance minister, neither in the US, nor in Europe or anything like that, who said that here fiat money is freedom. Here, it really looks like they are really here. Understand that crypto, Bitcoin also brings a certain freedom when you have a form of money that's too resistant and so on. So this is also the impact that has really surprised a lot of people here. That now a Treasury Secretary stands up and says, hey, folks, Bitcoin is freedom, crypto is freedom. Here, you really have to make a distinction, because not every crypto coin represents freedom here. Actually, only Bitcoin is true freedom here. Many crypto coins are also viewed critically. I wouldn't say that a Melania coin or a Trump coin really represents freedom. So you definitely have to look at that very, very critically. But the second thing he brings up, and here he definitely talked about Bitcoin. He clearly said Bitcoin 2 or 3 times in a row. That Bitcoin offers new investment opportunities for people who have been excluded from the financial system here, who ultimately had no access to the financial system, who are also affected by all the financial crises here. But now new young people are coming to Bitcoin. Now, of course, a savings nation can grow here again, and that naturally gives the whole thing a lot of positive momentum, now that it's being officially endorsed. Bitcoin is freedom, and Bitcoin is a legitimate savings tool that even creates new industries. for people who have otherwise been left out of the financial system here. Because, for example, a young person can't afford to buy property. It's really tough for them to build wealth through real estate investment. But with Bitcoin, it's definitely still very, very possible. When you look at the whole thing in the long term and so on, Bitcoin isn't going to turn into a limbo or anything like that tomorrow. It's more of a long-term game that you're playing here. Now it's getting exciting. Plan B just dropped a massive Bitcoin forecast. And there is always someone's Plan B, who creates a lot of, let's say, virality. His videos always get a ton of views. I always get a lot of questions about that. Hey Mark, why don't you make a video about the stock-to-flow model? That's basically the model that Plan B is presenting. What she found. And there are always people here who are really celebrating that. Because Plan B, he also puts out some really bullish predictions, and we're going to take a look at that right now. But we also have to stay critical here.
Then we'll see that the average return in those periods, in that red dot areas, was 40% plus. So that means a 1 month of 40% plus would be from today's 100K, 140 in February. And, well, since I expect multiple months of red dots, at least three times 40% would bring us from 100K to 270K, which is about here somewhere. This is the 300K line. So that's the absolute minimum Bitcoin price that I expect in 2025, 270,000. Now, if we look at 4 months of 40%, that would bring the current 100K to $380,000. And 5 months would even bring it to $530,000. So that's above this dotted line. So we'll see what happens.
This is really, really interesting. He assumes that we will see a minimum of a $1 Bitcoin price in 2025. And he's talking about red dots here, by which he essentially means months that have at least an average return of 40% or more. And he simply assumes that from now, from February until the end of December, we will see at least 3 of those red months. He's even considering 4 or 5 months. He's also making a price prediction. That means if we rise by 40% from the current price, we're looking at around $140,000. And this will apparently follow at least 3 times in a row according to Plan B. Of course, there will also be some small pullbacks in between, but we will definitely see at least 3 of those red months. And then we're here at a minimum Bitcoin price of $270,000. If we have 3 red dots, and if we have 4 red dots here or 4 months with 40% returns, on average, we're looking at $380,000. And with 5 months or 5 red dots, it's even $530,000. And here you have to pay attention. What's happening here? So on one hand, we're looking at the stock. That means how much Bitcoin is currently in circulation. And on the other side, the flow, how much new Bitcoin is coming in. And based on these 2 factors, Plan B basically creates his Bitcoin model. And we also have to say that the Bitcoin model has been wrong time and again. But we have this effect here, that this model is so massively bullish. And that's why people are always rubbing that in. And that's why this model is way more popular than, for example, the power law model, which is a lot more conservative, somewhere between, I don't know, at most 200,000, but more likely around 180,000 or so. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think it's much more than 200,000. That's what's in this cycle. So now, until the end of 2025. And here, Plan B is throwing out a 500,000 price prediction out in the bull case and in the bear case. We're already looking at 270,000, or what he said here. And that's just really, really bullish. And that's why this model is always hyped up a lot more. I mean, I'd be happy to take that if we hit the $270,000. But you have to keep in mind that this model is really just a short-term model. Because sooner or later, the stock-to-flow model is very likely to break. Because only a very small amount of new Bitcoin is coming into circulation, the stock-to-flow model will have less and less significance. It has significance, Plan B says that. That means it still has more meaning. The significance will decrease more and more with each halving. And as I said, we've already seen that. That in the past, the model hasn't always been accurate. Then Blame B says, yeah, that was just short term, where it hasn't been accurate. Overall, in the long run, the model is definitely correct again, and so we're just keeping an eye on it and seeing where we end up. And then we have a third interesting statement that kind of emphasizes something, maybe. Why maybe the 6-month period in the US is to evaluate the strategic Bitcoin or crypto reserve. It's not so bad at all. Anthony Fauci also mentioned it again, that this is actually an advantage. That we have 6 months here because we can really gather majorities now. And when you have majorities here, you can definitely build a law on a much better foundation. It's about how to quickly push this through, but there are really a lot of blockades in the Democratic camp. Many senators are voting against it. What's the status of the bullish? We just had an election. Do you have support in the Senate? About the...
What's the status of the bill? We just had an election. Do you have support in the Senate to pass this?
We are working right now to identify a bipartisan coalition to get it passed. We want to make sure that this is bipartisan, and it has to be to get the 60-vote threshold required in the U.S. Senate. And I've been working with colleagues in the House to promote this idea, and we're having good success. We're not there yet, but we're having good success.
So she says we're not quite at the point where we can push through a strategic Bitcoin crypto reserve yet. But they're trying to form a bipartisan coalition here. So a coalition that basically has large majorities in the Senate. So from the Democratic camp and from the Republican camp. And that's basically the foundation where a solid future for Bitcoin can be built. Because if Donald Trump rules by executive order and says, okay, we're buying something whatever I want, there will definitely be a lot of opposition to 1 million Bitcoin. And will it maybe change with a new government? If Donald Trump gets out of power or something like that, then it might get flipped again. Then there will be another executive order, and it will be much more sustainable if we do the educational work here. If you explain to the senators, hey, this is an important thing. Super important. We need to advocate for Bitcoin here. If we don't do this, the prosperity of the nation is at stake. And it might take a little longer, but on the other hand, the foundation will be much better. That's a lot more. There's also agreement from the Democratic camp, unlike if it were just imposed top-down by Donald Trump. And if you're feeling bullish on Bitcoin, I'll drop a link below. 21 Bitcoin How You Can Easily Simply Safely Buy Bitcoin. I recommend it. For beginners, advanced. No matter where you currently are in your Bitcoin journey, here you can use the code. You can save up to 20% on the fees when buying Bitcoin. Absolutely recommended here. See you later. Peace out.